If you see Daniel, tell him that James Foster's talk got switched to being now.
Yes, sure, but how can you know who is Daniel?
He's a student volunteer.
Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm James Foster. This is not the 2 o'clock talk. This is the 2:30 talk. You can just imagine that you took a little nap after that nice lunch. I'm going to start here and launch into the presentation. So we're going to be discussing a couple topics. One is over the general theme of using GemStone for web applications. We're going to make a note that these are personal projects, though if you see value in them, feel free to talk to any of the GemTalk people here and let us know. I'm going to be looking at two areas. One is how to install GemStone on an Ubuntu system using Debian packaging. And second is using WebGS as a backend for web applications. So starting with the Debian packaging. The formal install process for GemStone has changed little over the decades since I was first introduced to it as a customer 20 years ago. And chapter 1 is 16 pages on installing. Chapter 2 is on updating. And then 3 and 4 I haven't shown here. These are important and probably still need to be followed for most of the bigger customers that have a somewhat customized installation. But it would be nice to have something that's a little more approachable for people who want to just get exposed to it. So the common way of doing this in many of the Linux environments is something called a Debian package. And this is a file format that works with the APT, Advanced Packaging technology or system. We now have a alpha PPA, package archive place. To use it, there's just a few steps. Add this repository to your list of repositories, and I'll go through these in detail. Add the public key to your list of keys so that we can let you know that, yes, this is a legitimate source. Then apt update, apt install. So if you go to https://alpha-ppa.gemtalksystems.com, here we have the package repository. And to use this, update your sources list, add the key, and then do the install. So you can see the first line curl to a file, output file, and then we provide a location, and then we'll provide you with the sources file. We'll give you the key, and then apt update, apt install, GemStone server. This will ask you just a few questions. If you'd like to do a preceded or completely automated install, that again follows the packaging system where you can specify answers to the anticipated questions. So you can precede the password, precede the comparison, string comparison method, and then do the update install. Alternatively, you can browse the files and just download it directly and use a Debian command package dpkg install and specify the deb file. So those are some options. I'm going to have a 3-minute demo that I will try to do a little narration of. Go grab the video and go to the beginning. Click. So in part to show that there's nothing special, and also to confirm that this is how you can do it, I'm creating a virtual machine in my local environment, and I'm going to do just a regular Ubuntu install, taking primarily the defaults, setting up a 2 CPU, 4 gig machine with some disk. I'm going to pull in my key, public key, so that I can log in, passwordless login, and then just go through the rest of the install process. And when that finishes, reboot, and now I have just a basic Ubuntu environment. Okay, nothing else has been added. This is just what you would get. I'm going to take the curl of the sources and then of the packet of the public key, and then an apt update, and then I'm going to do apt install GemStone. It will load the files, ask for a password to install on the system, and then do the install process. When that finishes, I can log out, log back in again, and at this point, I have an environment where when I log in, the environment variables are set. I have a GemStone database running, and I can just say gslist. It tells me things are there. When I go into Topaz, I gave the default password kind of out of habit, but best practice, yes? Not on the video that I took of my screen. I'm sorry. I can go and give a little bit of the demo here, but okay, I guess I can zoom in videos. Okay, so here is the terminal on my GemStone. So I logged in, did a gslist. Topaz tried to log in, and it says the password is invalid. And so I set the correct password and got a successful login. From there, I can execute Smalltalk commands, send messages, and so on. So from there, I'm going to use VS Code. VS Code has a feature where you can connect over SSH to another system and then use it to browse and edit files. So here I'm going to use VS Code, open a folder, open the root folder, and see if I can give this slightly larger. So you can see we've got Etsy, cron. The cron job is not readable except by root because it has a password in it. But if I do a sudo, I can see that, and then that has the password. I can get to it. From here, we can see Etsy GemStone has the config files for the system, the gems. Run has the lock files. User lib GemStone has the product tree in a particular version. So this is where we're used to seeing things. User bin has the executables or references to the executables. And then var log has the log files. So here is a typical Ubuntu or Debian environment with all the pieces in the places they should be. So that is giving us the GemStone install process. So that's looking at those things. Now I'm going to go back to here. Next, I'm going to show you something called WebGS. Brief review, web, client makes a request, the server sends a response. So whether it's a browser, a phone, or something else, and then we would have GemStone on the back end. An advance in that technology is something called WebSockets, and some of that was mentioned in a talk earlier this morning. With that, the initial request looks the same as before, but there's an upgrade on the handshaking that upgrades it to a WebSocket that remains open. And so with the socket remaining open, you can send messages both directions. So the browser can be listening for messages from the server. So rather than having a timer and doing updates every few seconds, you can just wait, let the server send you some updates. So that's a useful thing. We'll get into a demo of that in a moment. WebGS has historically what we would call implicit routes, where you name a method a particular way, and then that will be by implicitly the handler for a particular request. So a request for /foo.gs will be handled by a method named foo_gs. But that's not the way it's done in much of the rest of the world. So there's a framework called Shelf, which is available in Dart. And in Shelf, we have this explicit routes where we say, when there's a GET request for hello, I want you to handle it this way. When there's a GET request for a user with a particular name, I want you to handle it this way. This morning we heard a little bit about Express in Node.js. And this has a similar sort of syntax where you say app.get, provide a path, and then provide an anonymous function, or in our vocabulary, a block, that will handle that request. So here we have something quite readable. The root request will be handled this way. A post request will be handled this way. And you can actually parameterize it so that you have the : user ID : book ID. And that will be parsed and passed to you as parameters. So in WebGS, what we have is you can ask for create a new router, and then define your application by saying, for films, I want this block to be executed and passed these arguments. For film's ID title, I want you to give me the title of the film with this ID, and so on. So we can define get, we can define post, put, and so on. So let's take a look at that. What I'm going to do here is I have my WebGS environment, and I'm going to clear and run sample2. What this is doing, let's see if I can. Okay. So again, this is just saying run some Smalltalk code. I'm going to have a variable app, my application. For films, I'm going to send a list of films. For a get of the title of a film, get the number of views, I have a post handler and a put handler. The post handler adds to the number of views. The put handler updates the number of views. My understanding is the convention is that put is idempotent, so that if you repeat it, you'll get the same result every time, whereas post can have side effects. So if you post some views, I'm going to add. If you put the views, I'm going to replace. So if we'll take, so that is now running on a particular port. So I'm going to open up Postman, and I'm going to say, send a request for films. And I guess Postman can also I guess I can't make that any smaller. So here I'm going to send a request for films, and the back end sends me a list of films. I can say I'd like film 1, and it says here's the JSON for film 1. I can say what's film 1's title, and it says this is the title of it. I can say what are the number of views, and it says, well, there are some views. I can do a post to increase the number of views by 3. So now there's 45 views. Or I can do a put of 3, and now there's 3 views, which I can confirm with a get. And there's that. Okay, so that is a little demo of that. So that's the explicit route. Code and packages. So we did mention the GemStone or GemTalk repository for the GemStone packages, and here is the web page that you will see when you get there. You can just copy these lines and you should have GemStone installed in a Ubuntu environment. You can do it purely automated without any non-interactive install. Alternatively, you can browse the files and download the one you want, either AMD or ARM, 365, 366, and then if you download it directly, then you can just do a package install. We have, let's see, in J.G. Foster, GemStone Deb is the package generation repository, which is public but probably of little interest. And then WebGS is the web framework that we've been looking at, where you can install something into your GemStone environment and then make requests on it. I can look at this using IDE, a tool. I guess when my system was off, the session disconnected, but I can get back in. So the code for film is essentially a domain object that has some variables. It has class methods that answer the collection of films. It has a with ID method that looks it up. And then on the instance side, there's the getters and setters. So relatively straightforward there. WebGS has, like many of these frameworks, a request object where you can find out the method, the URI, the path, version, headers, arguments, body content, and so on. And then a response object where you can specify code, various headers, and the contents. So with that, we have then the router that has the routes where you can say get, do, or handle, head, post, put, so on. And then something that we'll go through and just say, look for something that handles this. So those are the code, the packages, and that's, I'm going to try to quit here on time, but I have a few minutes for discussion and questions. Yes?
What's the status of the install of, what's the time for the install of GemStone 3.7?
Well, I was hoping to demo that, but I think you may need to wait a few days for that. But yes, it is when it's released, and I think we'll hear more about that in the next couple days, but in the roadmap. But yes, it should be just it's just turn the crank, update the literals, constants. Mm-hmm. So how many of you have used some of these other frameworks, Express and Shelf and other things? And you know, how do you find using them and the interactions? You know, is the explicit routing seem fairly straightforward? so yeah.
So about the implicit routing, I'm not, so I've never used the GemStone.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
So does it mean that for long URLs, you have very long method names?
Yes. Well, no, and that's part of the reason that makes the explicit routing more attractive is the implicit routing just works on the first piece. So we don't go very long. But I mean, I guess it depends on how long the first piece is. But yes, it could have long method names.
And do the two methods, the two types coexist at the same time? You can define implicit and explicit routes?
I don't support that. Well, actually, yes. So you would take a little bit of programming to do that in the sense of inheriting methods. Right now, it's designed so it's a little bit more of an either-or, but could certainly look at it if that seemed useful. Okay. Well, I'll be around and look forward to discuss this and any other GemStone or Smalltalk topics you have.